In today's video, we're going to be talking about possibly the 5 most common mistakes beginners make. At number 5, I'm going to say not fully understanding force limit. Certainly when I was a newer player, I looked at force limit as if it was a law and not a guideline. I would build to force limit regardless. If my economy was poor, I would still build to force limit. If I was in a situation where maybe 1 or 2,000 extra men could have helped me expand faster, I wouldn't do it because I thought, oh, my force limit is 9, I can't go over that 9. Whereas if I pushed my economy a little bit to get to 10, maybe 11k troops, I could have easily stomped my neighbour. But I think a lot of newer players are scared to do that because the money obviously ramps up so fast. And likewise it works the other way as well. Maybe you've just had a tough war, or even if you just took loads of land from a neighbour and your force limit is ramped up by another 4 or 5k. If you're really struggling for money, maybe you've got a few loans you need to pay off, there's no rush to hit that force limit. Again, as a newer player, I would, no matter the circumstances, reach my force limit because I felt like it was the right thing to do. It's a guideline, be flexible around it. Probably the most painful one for me to watch, and I hate to see it, is treating rebels harshly. And don't get me wrong, when absolutism comes into the game, it's something that you want to do as much as possible, I would say, in certain circumstances. But before that, it seems really appealing as a newer player. Maybe you've had a bad experience with rebels, and you see 20k rebels are about to spawn somewhere, and you've only got 15k troops yourself, and you think, oh, that sounds bad. If I just spend 49 military power, I can stop them. But throughout the course of the game, that adds up so much, and everyone who knows and is a bit more experienced, they know the monarch points, the monarch power is so vital, especially military. Especially as now, as more advanced player, you kind of learn how to use rebels, how to maintain and manage them. Sometimes you want them to spawn just so you can destroy their army and you don't have to worry about any more separatism for 10 years. Maybe you can park your troops on territory to stop them spawning in the first place. Under some circumstances, I will use harsh treatment. Maybe if I'm in an awful situation and if rebels would spawn, it will pretty much nearly end my game. In those circumstances, yes, go ahead if it makes you feel safe and secure. But otherwise, it's very much a last resort. Another big one that I still find myself doing, it's quite difficult to break the habit, is making sure your diplomats aren't off cooldown or they need to be assigned doing something. Whether that's building a spy network on your neighbours to get claims, building spy networks on maybe your rivals if you want to slander their merchants or otherwise harm them. They could be improving relations, maybe to get that alliance that you desperately need to feel more secure, maybe take a fight. Or maybe you're improving relations just to get that AE, the aggressive expansion, to tick down ever so slightly. They're too good to just be sitting there. I suppose the only reason you wouldn't, maybe you'd keep one if you desperately need to declare a war at 1 or 2 days notice, or sort of sue for peace at the perfect day where it's a fort's kind of flip and you need to get it done. Other than that, there's no real reason to keep your diplomats sitting there. You might as well send them out. It doesn't cost you anything and they're only going to make good things happen. One mistake that took me by surprise, and I think from the sheer amount of Reddit posts and on the Steam and the Paradox forums, aggressive expansion. I don't think people realise it's in the game until you get some monster coalition of 50 nations attack you when you feel like you're having a great game for one of your first early games. It needs to be managed. Again, it kind of ties in with the diplomat example. If your diplomats are improving relations, it ticks down. A good tactic is to try and go, say if you're going to attack to the west, take territory, then maybe you then switch immediately to go expanding on the eastern front, so the same nations aren't repeatedly getting that aggressive expansion stacking against them. Maybe you can bounce around attacking Catholics, and then you can attack some Sunni Muslims. Just needs to be managed. It's so tempting to expand so fast, especially when you come from other games, maybe Total War, where doesn't really feel much of a punishment for expanding aggressively. in EU4, it's certainly caught a lot of people out and probably will continue to do so in the future. At number 2, in a similar vein to force limit, I think building or keeping too many forts is something that I certainly used to do, and I do see it quite often with newer players. Forts make you feel safe, but they don't always contribute too much defensively. Especially when you build them on plain ground or stuff that's not going to give you those defensive bonuses. Yes, if it's in your capital, it can certainly help stall out a war so you don't instantly get smashed. But other than that, the money's probably better spent elsewhere. Maybe a few extra troops on the force limit, maybe some mercenaries. Unless you're rolling in money, try and keep the forts down to a minimum.